3/4 of emerging diseases that are new diseases that have recently been detected in humans come from animals. As we urbanize, as we increase the density of our populations and the connectivity of our populations, what were isolated spillover events in the past could become global pandemics, really within days.
While the race to develop and distribute the COVID vaccine was the fastest in medical history, how we prevent future pandemics is a messier problem. But there are solutions, and they could also benefit our climate.
The fundamental reason why we're having these zoonotic spillover events is because of our disruption of the environment.
Before we started wide-scale agriculture, the planet looked like it would, depending on where you are in the world, covered in more forests. Grasslands were, full of herding animals and not giant farms. So you're definitely seeing food and agriculture being the #1 driver of land use change around the world, bar none, nothing even comes close. And we're seeing a population continue to explode. And so, by 2050, we'll be pushing 10 billion people. In Brazil, you would have seen a lot bigger Amazon, but it's been chopped down to grow soy or to graze cattle.
And this land use change is not just putting pressure on our climate and biodiversity, it's increasing our exposure to new pathogens.
For those diseases to get from wildlife into humans, they have to pass through barriers. When we disrupt the habitats of wild animals, we force them to move, to find food or shelter. And stressed animals, food-stressed animals, physiologically stressed animals are much more likely to shed virus into the environment.
But it's not just wild animals which can be a reservoir for new diseases.
Intensive farming is a huge factor in the emergence of infectious disease. You have stressed animals that are more susceptible to becoming infected. They're close to each other, so they can easily pass the infection from one animal to another. This creates the conditions for rapid spread of new pathogens and potentially even the evolution of pathogens to become more transmissible in animals.
Talking about how we farm and feed future generations does mean we have to talk about what we eat.
We eat the food that we eat for a whole host of reasons, mostly rooted in our culture and history and thousands of years of shaping what the local environments would afford us. I think over time, different forces of modern society have pushed us into much more convenient, lower cost, cheaper foods, which has created a lot more calories for the world, but also some pretty significant unintended consequences, both for the planet's health and for humans.
Changing how we farm and its voracious appetite for land is essential to reducing our climate impact. But it also might save us from another pandemic.
And so simple ways that we can reduce that are by reducing the disruption of animal habitats. Reduce fragmentation, maintain intactness of habitats so animals have the food they need, the habitat they need to be able to be healthy and not have to depend on humans.
Food and agriculture, I think, holds the power and potential to solve many of these, giant challenges that we face. I think we are on the precipice of a true transformation about how we produce our food because the economic incentives are starting to emerge that will make the economics work for growers to start using practices that protect the soil and protect the biodiversity of these ecosystems as opposed to just be paid to extract from it.
Even though we've just gone through this major pandemic, we're not investing in what we call primary pandemic prevention, the strategies that we need to do to stop spillovers happening in the first place.
We take our food for granted, and we don't think about all that it's embedded in the choices we're making every single day. In the end, though, if our culture doesn't value food that prioritizes the well-being of the planet, then we're not going to get very far. And I think the big unlocks are grower economics and cultural shift. And if we can do that and keep everybody aligned, then we can make a lot of progress.
But if we can farm more efficiently and reverse our demand for land, we could dodge some other bullets too.